Assalamu alaikum dear viewers, a very hearty welcome to this particular session of business communication. At the genesis of this session, I would focus on top 10 tips of business communication. That means in order to be a smart communicator, in order to enhance the proficiency in communication, these top 10 tips are very important. Anyway, let me now discuss these tips one by one, because what I strongly believe, if students, if you follow, even if we all follow these top 10 tips according to experts, we can be very smart communicator. It will definitely ratchet up our proficiency in business communication. You can handle business issues more smartly. Anyway, the first one is read. That means I was deliberately telling repeatedly time and again in my earlier sessions that actually in order to be smart in communication, the most powerful weapon is language. First of all, you will have to be smart in language, and only then you can become a smart communicator. You can write good, you can speak good. So to enhance your command in language, it is a must that you continue reading. And remember, this is a very continuous process. It's not something like you just develop a practice for 1 month, 10 months or 1 year or 2 years, then you stop. It's not like that. Even there are ample scopes for improvement in the language until the last day of your life. So I strongly insist, and this is the number one priority, that you continue reading, you continue with your efforts to learn more and more. That will help you to become a smart communicator. The more you learn, the stronger command you develop on the language, the smarter communicator you can become, and you can become a boss in the world of business communication. So that's why reading is very important. And again, remember, this is a continuous process. This is not something you just start and you just discontinue. It's not like that. Until the last day, until the last moment of your life, it is possible that you improve your efficiency in language, and believe me, that is the springboard for you to be a smart communicator. You can become an excellent writer, you can become an excellent speaker as well. Next point is listen. Listen intelligently. Well, when a speaker delivers his speech, and if you are in the audience, it's very important that you listen intelligently. You try to devote the highest possible level of concentration so that not a single point is missed. So this is from the listener's point of view. And when even the speaker at the end of the speech, when he is about to take the feedback from the audience, he should also listen to the audience carefully. The audience, people in the audience, they might raise lot of questions, lot of queries, and those should be listened properly, carefully by the speaker, so that he can really understand the feedback properly. And of course, when the speaker understands the feedback properly, he can make necessary adjustment. And from the audience point of view, it is extremely important. Let me give you an example. There are certain international standard tests like TOEFL, like IELTS. If you want to undertake or pursue higher education in the Western countries, this is a requirement for most of the Western universities. So what happens, if you undertake this test, IELTS or TOEFL, there are different modules. There are a number of modules, and one of the modules is listening. Because remember, your efficiency in listening is a very important part of communication. So if you cannot listen properly, your score in that particular module is very poor, and that affects the overall band score. Why this standardized test? They have incorporated listening because they could understand, they are smart enough to understand that yes, listening is an important part of the communication. If you are a smart listener, if a student is a smart listener, he can pick up the points from the teachers efficiently, quickly. He can grab the ideas, and of course it makes things easier for him to understand the concepts, to pick up the concepts, etc. Well, now next point is think and plan. It is strongly recommended that when a speaker speaks, before a speaker goes to deliver a speech, or if you decide to, or if you are required to write something, it is very much required that you should think and plan. Think about what? Think about what message you are going to communicate. Plan about what message you are going to communicate. Well, let me give you an example. The day before yesterday, I was informed about the video recording today. So I was really thinking, I'm pondering over what are the topics that I am going to discuss in this particular video session. So I was thinking, and also I made a plan, because I know that if I can pre-plan things well ahead of time, definitely my presentation is going to be much better if I don't make any plan. So things were planned, things were, I tried to consult a notebook. I was trying to sort out relatively more important points, the issues, the points, the topics that I will discuss in my video lecture. So, I was pre-planning all these things, I was seriously thinking about these things, and finally, I made a brief note on all these issues, you know. So, naturally, if I come just without any preparation and the video presentation takes place, one should think that the video presentation will not be at all up to the mark or up to expectation. Therefore, it is strongly recommended that before you speak, regardless of wherever you speak, regardless of whom you are speaking to, there should be some sort of thinking, there should be some sort of pre-planning. If you pre-plan, suppose I am a university teacher, I deliver lecture at the highest level, at the university level. So, before you know, delivering the lecture, if I have some sort of planning, if I have some sort of thinking, naturally it will make my presentation, it will make my lecture, much better, much entertaining, much more enjoyable to the students. Naturally, for any professional in the business world, suppose you are a boss, you will conduct a meeting. Now, just if you hastily come to the venue and just conduct a meeting, hold a meeting, maybe it will not be that much fruitful, your presentation will not be impressive. But what you can do, if there is a homework, there is a pre-planning, if you think beforehand what you are going to do, etc., definitely that is going to help you. So, dear viewers, what I would appreciate, before you go to speak somewhere, before you decide to write something on certain issues, you think about them, you think about those issues, you make a pre-plan, and definitely this strategy is going to help you positively. Next point is use appropriate language. Well, it is always desirable that the speaker, when he speaks, he should use simple, easily understandable language. Why? Because there may be someone, or there are some people in the audience who may not be familiar with the difficult words, difficult expressions, etc. So, it is always desirable to get a good feedback from the audience, from the other party. It is very important that the speaker should, the communicator should use easy, simple, understandable language. The language should not be ambiguous. Well, there are certain expressions which are ambiguous. I mean, the people in the audience, they may not be smart enough to read between the lines. So, that is why it is always desirable, it is recommended that you should speak as simply as possible. You should use the language properly, you should use the language delicately, you should use the language decently. That is what is very important in business communication also. Next point is be open minded, free frank. Well, actually, I mean, if we want to learn from each other, we have to have a positive attitude. Maybe you might have difference in opinion, you might have some sort of disagreement with the speaker, and the speaker might have disagreement on certain issues, but of course, it is desirable, it is very much expected that you, I mean, the speaker should be open minded, and also the people in the audience, they should also be open minded, free, frank, so that if there is freeness, frankness, of course, the learning process becomes much easier, or the exchange process, exchange of information, exchange of views, exchange of opinion, that becomes much easier, much more convenient, and of course, that helps communication positively. Let me give you an example. I mean, suppose if you have negative attitude about everything. So, once the speaker asks you any question, or if you raise any query, you started negatively, you started castigating him or criticizing him. Well, that can only deteriorate the environment, and remember, by deteriorating the environment, the communication process will be disrupted, and that will of course affect the spirit of the communication. We have to have positive attitude. We must, let me tell you again, we may have this difference in opinion, we may like or dislike something, but that should not be disclosed, or that should not be expressed in an indecent way. Everything should be taken positively, and of course, there should be mutual respect, and there should be, I mean, you must have respect for other people's feelings, and other people should have respect for your feelings. So, this is something which is very much recommended in business communication. Next point is select appropriate media. Well, this is the technical device. I mean, this is something I was just talking about at early in an earlier session. I mean, the choice of the proper media, it depends on whether the presentation is an oral presentation, whether the presentation is a visual presentation, or whether the presentation is something like it's a written presentation. So, depending on what type of presentation you are going to do, I mean, you should choose the technical device and or appropriate media, because if the media is not chosen properly, it will definitely affect the communication process negatively, and the entire exchange or communication will be disrupted. So, it is also important to choose the proper media. Next is time or duration. Well, before a speaker is set to deliver speech, he should look at, it's very important, how much time is available to him, how much time is there at his disposal. Suppose, let me just give you an example. Before coming here, I was informed that my session will have a duration of 20 minutes. So, naturally, when I developed the contents, when I prepared the contents, I was thinking and planning the contents, it was very much active in my mind that I will be allowed only 20 minutes time. So, the size of my lecture, the length of my lecture should not exceed, keeping in mind it should not exceed 20 minutes time. So, there should be consistency, the contents of my lecture, the length of my lecture should be in accordance with the time available to me. This is very important. Otherwise, what will happen? Maybe you will not be able to complete all the topics of discussion. Maybe so you have to just withdraw from the middle of the battlefield, which is not desirable. That is why it is important that the speaker should keep in mind how much time he is allowed, how much time he is given, how much time available at his disposal for his speech. Dear viewers, the next point is obtain feedback. Yes, it is very important. Actually, it is the barometer of the success or failure of the speaker. Suppose I am a university teacher, I deliver lecture in the classroom, and after say 1 hour continuous lecture, I can I can just pause for a few moments and ask the students, just I can ask them for questions. I can ask them whether they have understood my topics, whether there is any confusion or any misunderstanding, and so on. So, by doing that, I can know the feedback, and remember, this feedback is the barometer of the speaker's success or failure. If the feedback is good, what does it mean? If the students can answer the questions or queries of the teacher clearly, or if they are convinced, well sir, we understand everything of what you have delivered, we are very impressed with your deliberation, and so on, of course the speaker is successful, the teacher is a very successful teacher. So, in fact, whatever grand scholar a teacher is, it does not make any sense unless or until the students understand his discussion, his lecture. Exactly in the same way, whatever big a communicator, big guy or a high profile guy a communicator is, it does not make any sense unless the audience can understand it. Nelson Mandela, he is one of the most legendary politicians in the world. Why? When Nelson Mandela, what he does usually when he is just in a field, there is a huge mammoth gathering, and when he is about to deliver his speech, do you know what does he do usually? He just pauses for a few moments, he looks at the audience, and he tries to interact with the eyes of the millions of people in front of him, and he tries to get some feedback at the very beginning. He tries to read the pulse of the audience, the people in the hundreds of thousands of people in the audience, what are they expecting from him, what are they anticipating from him, and accordingly Nelson Mandela plays the music of the audience. That is why he is one of the smartest politicians in the world, because he is an excellent communicator. So, what I am trying to say by mean by saying all this is very important that you obtain the feedback this way or that way. Sometimes the body language of the audience can give you excellent feedback. The students will be, or the people in the front of you, they will be swinging their head positively or negatively. There may be some sort of splashy smiles on their faces. So, dear viewers, we have to understand, by looking at the feedback, by trying to understand the feedback, the speaker should be able to assess his success or failure. Dear viewers, next point is we have to use appropriate tone. What does it mean? In communication, to use appropriate tone is very important. Well, now if a speaker just approaches the podium and with a very graceful smile on, or shining smile on his face, if he delivers that emotional message, it does not look good, it does not look decent, it does not match reality. So, if it is an emotional message, there should be some sort, or if it is a message of grievance, or if it is a bad news, of course there should be reflection on the face of the speaker. If it is a good news, there should be splashy shining smiles on the face of the speaker, because so that audience immediately understand, yeah, the speaker has come up with a good news, or something which is good for all of us. So, that is very important. Tone, I mean, the message can be an emotional message, it can be a warning. Suppose like the boss has come, all the subordinates are sitting in front of him, the boss Of course, he should be, I mean, suppose he is going to communicate a message of warning for some reasons whatsoever. In that case, there should be reflection on his face, the wrinkles on the face, the different, the movement of his eyebrows, his look, everything should reflect his body language. Most importantly, should give the message that yes, he has come here to with a message of warning. That is what is the appropriate tone. I mean, if it is an emotional message, there should be signs of emotion on the face of the speaker. If it is a very good news, there should be signs of he is in an ecstatic mood, he is in some sort of euphoria, and so on. That is the appropriate tone. Next is aim high. What is aim high? Of course, actually, in every communication, the status, the dignity of the parties. Let me tell you, let me clarify it, what I want to mean by saying all this. The status, the dignity. Suppose I am a university teacher. When I teach at MBA executive level, I have a different style. And when I teach at BBA level, I have a totally different style. Why? My BBA students, most of them are very immature, I mean younger guys, with very little experience and exposure in their life. But what about my MBA students? I have many MBA students who are holding very high responsible positions in different organizations. I have many MBA students who are majors and colonels in Bangladesh Army. So naturally, my style of presentation should be a little bit, should be significantly different from the style of presentation when I am in the BBA class. My lecture at MBA level differs from my lecture at BBA level. Why? Because the audience in MBA level, the quality of the audience is better than that of the quality of BBA students. Naturally, I have to maintain different standard when I teach at MBA level. That is what I am trying to talk about. Dear viewers, you are all MBA students, you are all matured, so you understand what I want to talk about, what I want to mean by saying all these things. And I strongly believe that if you follow these 10 tips, you can be very smart communicator. And if you are very smart communicator, naturally you can be very good professional. And I wish you all success. And with this, I want to wrap up my discussion on these 10 tips of business communication.